and the next coming months ahead is to put you in a position where you've got somewhere circa between $25,000 and $35,000 cash. Now, this is on the side of your current bills, your current, lifestyle, your expenses, school fees, etc. I want you to now think about, how do I accumulate an additional 25, 35K as a side hustle against my current income? That means we're going to be smashing out an extra 10, 12, 15, 18 hours of work a week. That might mean that you double down on the marketing in your business. If it's a small enterprise, you might say, listen, normally we budget $3,500 a month, Mark. I'm going to have to spend $7,000, because it's not enough to sit there and slash the back out of your budget, slash the back out of your lifestyle. Entrepreneurs don't do that. We really sort of attack one side. We're more sensible, we're more prudent with our money and our cash flow, but we're also about seeing things better than they really are. That means plying in, making more coin, and getting ahead. So that's really the objective of today. So a couple of things, and I want you to be clear about your spending map. I don't necessarily believe in budgets. They sound too restrictive to me. I want you to sort of come from a place of, I want to manage my money. I don't want to be stingy nor tight, but I do need to know where this stuff is going. If I'm dedicating 35, 45, 60 hours a week to something, I need to make sure I get the maximum return for my efforts. And you and I now are starting to talk about how it is that I can create an extra 500, 450, 620 bucks a week consistently for the next 2 years. I can squirrel away $30,000. Mark, that's my first introduction into investing. You and I both know in Australia, between $180,000, maybe $230,000 cash to put down a deposit on a home, and then a bank steps in and takes the senior debt position. That's an enormous amount of money. I don't want to wait 5, 8, 9, 11 years with you. I really want to get those wheels turning fast and efficiently. So a couple of things I've jotted down here. You look around today, the building industry is truly a very unique space. They are inundated with work. We have a housing crisis on foot right now. We know the federal government is earmarking about 350,000 new immigrants, which is the highest amount of immigration since the 1960s. So what that tells us is that we have a shortage of housing. Now, to capitalise on that change, you want to think about, how do I position myself to help out the trades on a Saturday? You might have a brother-in-law that's a plumber. You might have a mate from high school that's a sparky. You might be a woman saying, Mark, I typically work as a dental assistant through the week, but I know someone in the building industry. How would I start doing build cleans? I mean, a lot of these people are making $800 a day. It's kind of standard. It's about $2,000 a week, $2,500 a week. Now, if you're a pretty good tradie, i.e. a plumber employing 4 people, you're making $350,000, $450,000 a year, and particularly more so in Sydney. So this is a license to print money. My suggestion is, extend yourself, start to work harder. And remember, this is not about smashing out 80 hours a week. It might be 55, 60, and it's not forever. It's just a season. But we need to accumulate as well as manage our money in an efficient way. So I would say to you, the trades are begging. The trade services sector is absolutely begging, screaming for more and more people to work in that field. I would also say to myself, if I'm already a tradie, how do I bring on one more person? How do I start to expand that business? Do I lease another van? Do I put on another apprentice, another tradesperson? Do I start to seek more work? There's no question the work's there. It's paying extremely well. And going forward, my honest opinion, I can tell you now, the next 10, 20 years of being a tradesperson will be incredibly fruitful. Because Australians, one, we don't typically like to work. We're quite lazy. But I'll also say to you, people don't want to be out in the sun, sweating, digging trenches, driving excavators, lifting frames for houses. And that's going to be one of those go-to sectors that will always continue to shine. When I was a kid, 21, 22 as a tradie, you'd be lucky if you were getting 23, 24 bucks an hour, and you paid for all your nail gun nails. Today, I see tradies now quoting me $83 an hour and $110 service fee to come out and check something. It is insane. They're making more than professional people. I'm talking about, lawyers, I'm talking about accountants. It's never been like that in history. You think back for a moment, even teachers would earn more money than a tradesperson 30 years ago. Not the case today. We see clients come through our, investment arm, Naviset, And you've got, young people, men and women, 33, 34 years old with 5 investment properties and a child to boot. You can't do that unless you're making $300,000 a year, $400,000 a year collectively, particularly with a dependent. So you're seeing this happen time and time again. I would say to you, go follow the money, follow the breadcrumbs like Hansel and Gretel. If you're in business right now, and that could be an air conditioning business, it could be I run a marketing business, it really is time to step that plan up. You're seeing an economy right now that's really thriving. I think things will change in the future, but at least for the short term, the interim, it's fair to say the economy is in very good shape. Unemployment's hovering around 3.5%, 4%. It means that there's an opportune time to really get in there, make some money, and start to squirrel that away. I'm trying to break this down into steps because I find 200 grand in savings would have to be overwhelming. It's an enormous amount of cash, particularly when you're sort of almost spending everything that you earn. Mark, I'm barely making ends meet. Me and my wife, me and my de facto, we're going 10 to the dozen, man. Between tollways, sushi, picking up the kids from school, there's nothing left. We've always got 4.5, 8 grand, 11,000 in the bank. Fuck that. We've got to get you to a place where it's at least 25, 35 grand that we can now shift into an investment and start to have that compound and work for you. If we've got 30 grand and it's a 10% return, it's already making you $3,000 a year. That's tight. That's really good money. Well, it's not going to pay many of my bills. It's the start. It's at least the beginning. There's no point saying, there's Mark, I'm insignificant. I can't do this. Well, where's that going to get you? That idea. So definitely, double down, invest in business, and expect to get a greater return. Employ more people. Go out there, do something different. Work harder. And again, it's not forever. Make it a 2-year window. Commit to it for 2 or 3 years. This is how it's going to be. And I'd say this also. I want to encourage you because I see too many people have this idea that, I'll put in 2 years and see what happens. When I got into property, I can honestly say to you that I had so much debt. I was so desperate. I didn't choose property because I was smart, because it was the way that millionaires across the planet had done it. I just realized in my head, it's got the biggest chunks of money to be gained. Fuck it, I'm all in. And that was really, I think, for me to adopt that very principle of, I don't care about anything. Fucking Bitcoin. I don't care about startups. I don't care about anything else. I'm choosing this lane and this lane only. Fuck it, I'm all in. I really think that cultural idea, for me, is what set up success. I had no other distractions. I was paying no attention to anything else. I was going to be good at it. As I said, I was not passionate. I was desperate. And I think sometimes that's the best thing. So if you're looking for solutions, yes, choose property, but don't have this half-assed idea that I'll see what happens. I'll kick a few stones and see what comes of it. That is not the approach. You're only letting yourself down and wasting your own time. Any thoughts you've got?
Yeah. I mean, you're talking about it, but you're kind of telling us to invest in ourselves, it seems like. We might not have enough yet cash in the bank to go into property. But you're saying the first step is actually to invest in ourselves, which is our time, it's our skills, it's what we can bring.
Well, the greatest ROI in life is you. Everyone keeps looking outside. What can I invest in? Invest in you. Build those fucking skills. The minute you can stand there and say, I know enough about property. I don't have to know everything, but I can do this part, this aspect incredibly well. That's time to harvest. You've only got to make 30, 40, 60 grand of the deal. Fuck, that just projects you so far forward. If it's 40 grand, it might take you 3-4 months to make that in a traditional job. But it might take you 25 days on the side of your current job. Your current job is paying for all the bills and expenses. This now becomes a chunk on the side of, and that's when you really start to get ahead.
That's interesting because it's very easy to look outside and go, I need to change everything to get further in life.
Yes.
I need to change my career, or I need to, it's very easy to look and forget what is currently valuable and look outside.
Yeah.
But is that taking our mind off the game?
No, it's not. That's a really good point you've raised, actually. I discourage this idea of going back to fucking uni. I mean, I've got people love academia. I get it. There's a lot of smart people. We need them. I get that. That's medicine all over. They save lives. What an incredibly noble pursuit. I don't have that brain power, but I realise with fucking money, I'd have influence, and it's pretty much the same thing, just in a different way. So the wealthier you become, the more of service, the more purpose you have, and the more I feel that you can facilitate other people in change. So when you've got no money, you don't have a fucking voice. When you've got heaps of money, look at Trump. Everybody hears you. There is no dispute about that. So I was never given a medical brain. And in many regards, I'm kind of grateful. But I was very determined to be self-made, not silver-spooned. And with that, you're right. Those skills are layered in. They're bedded down. It's a part of your DNA. And I see people all the time, and this is an interesting point that you may not have realised just yet. Jot this down in your own words. But when shit goes wrong, tectonic cracks start to appear, economies melt down, you're threatened with bankruptcy, your industry changed, the opportunity's gone, you lost that government contract. It's not like you fucking care. You have built up such a broad skill set, such a cachet of experience and knowledge. It doesn't fucking matter. You'll literally go and apply that somewhere else and do well. Why is it that it takes somebody 10, 12, 13 years to be a multi-millionaire, they lose it and it takes them 2.5? What's that? It's not coincidental. The pathway is clear. When I was divorced, my portfolio was in the early 90 millions. Well, that was a big chunk to carve off, 50% of that. That was recreated in full in 24 months. How's that fucking work? It took me 16 and a half years. Half's gone. 2.5 years later, it's done. It's over. Tick box. Back there. So there's a lot to be said for skills, yes. And I think when we start to bring those skills in, it galvanizes who the fuck we are. We're capable. It's like, I'm not scared of the ructions. I don't give a fuck what happens in the economy. I really don't. And what I think that you and I are entering is a very late cycle of exaggerated debt, and that just spells opportunity. I think, April, May next year, we'll be in a very different place economically. If you're prepared, if you're doing the work now, if you're really taking on board what's being discussed here, you're already making phone calls to your tradie mates or your girlfriend that's already got that hair salon or the beauty salon on Saturday, fucking put me down. I'm in for 8 hours. Grandma can take care of the kids. I've got to get ahead. I must.
It's perfect what you're saying because, we're just bombarded, social media, we're just constantly bombarded with someone else's life.
Well, it's instant, yes. It's instant gratification.
Yeah,
instant
someone else's success. And it really, it's easy to devalue
of course
our skills and constantly just be distracted by that.
It's a great point. Maybe you want to turn the fucking Instagram off for the next 2 years as well. If you really want to be focused, if you really want to be intensive, if you really want to make progress, turn that shit off. It does nothing. It adds no value to you at all. I would sit down and watch Instagram genuinely, maybe an hour and a half every fortnight, and it's purely inspirational only. There is no comparison. I'm not sitting there going, oh, I wish. And it's easy for you to say, Mark, you're halfway. Not at all. I'll sit there and just use inspiration. I'll go down the train of boats and look at surfboards. Wow, if he can, I can. But I'm not sitting there, we've done it before, we're all guilty. Where you look at your bloody phone, 2.5 hours of your life has disappeared. It's 11:15 at night. You're like, what the fuck happened? I'm tired. My eyes are watering, right? It's terrible. That's distraction. That doesn't get you anywhere. That's living out someone else's life. That's living out someone else's fantasy. And none of that shit's real. We know that. It's not a life. It's just the highlights. They're the summits of someone's life. It's not how it is.
It's a slippery slope.
It is. It certainly is. Let's be conscious of time. Now, let's talk about assets, because as you start to, and I hope by now, I trust now, that you have made some decisions. I recognise I'm going to need 25, 35K, and that's going to have to occur, Mark, over the next 12, 15, 18, 22 months. I'm really committed to that. I'm going to work my nuts off. I'm going to work my ass off and apply myself. I'm going to put in extra Saturdays. I'm going to start early. I'm going to start working at 6:30 as opposed to 8. And that morning piece is silence. I can have some deep thinking before the rest of the business arrives or my boss arrives. but I'm going to be more efficient. You've got to work out, how do I start to earn more, significantly more than my expenses? How do I out earn my expenses? And I'm not talking about $10 a week, because that ain't going to get you where you want to go. You won't arrive. I'm saying to you, how do I bank an extra $350, $450 a week that goes off to a private account, a separate account, and now I can do something with that. That's my stash. I've got 24, 27 and a half grand. What do I do now? Now the conversations you and I can have about that are very different from someone sitting there with 8 grand with a credit card debt. You just got to put yourself in that place. And it takes hard work. Write this down. Grind. Just grind. No whinging. No sort of whining. Just fucking grind. There are times in life where you realize this is the task that I must execute. And it's right now. It's literally now. You need to put your head down. Any questions you guys have got? I've missed my intro. I'm so naughty. Scott will be so upset. Please comment. Forward your questions now. I would say to you, make the most of this time together. Any question, fire it down, fire it into the question box, and then that way I can help you answer them in real time. If you want to share this video with anyone you know that you think needs help with literally earning more money, but also too, as I say to you now, jot this down, asset classes. A couple of things that I really want to sort of earmark for you. As we sort of start to work together here over the next coming months, I want you to have a think about just what kind of asset classes you intend to play in. Now, I would suggest that you want to have assets that pay you money. Now, that sounds pretty simple, Mark. I've heard of that before. But passive income is the principle of it earning money 24/7, 365. And that might sound like a whimsical idea. Oh yeah, I've heard about that before. Is it real? Well, think of a piece of property. Think of a rental house, think of a townhouse, think of a flat, a unit. And that's important. You can think of a business too. I'd like you to think about business. Where are you? What do you do? I've got this really terrific beauty salon. A friend of mine, she owns a Botox clinic and crushing it. Like unbelievable profits. It makes my eyes water. But you want to make sure that this thing can create money 24/7, 365. Because at the end of the day, you want to make sure that it's scalable and saleable. So when you think about this, and I'm trying to differentiate between the two, when you think of property, you want to have significant amounts. But when I say that, don't think of houses, townhouses, scattered all over Western Sydney or Northern Melbourne or West Brizzy, northern reaches of Perth. You really want to be able to have them in pockets. What do I mean by that? Motels. When you start talking about property, you want to have the passive cash flow. You want to make sure that all your expenses are minimized. Have a motel. You might decide, Mark, I'm going to go into commercial. I'm going to have 4 industrial sheds. Have them all together. I'm a developer. My father's a builder. My brother-in-law's a builder. My mate from school is a builder. Well, instead of building townhouses scattered all over Melbourne, let's just put 5 together in one place. Because now it's scalable, but it's also, as an asset, saleable. And that's very, very important to hold on to. Years back, I sort of stumbled across a segment of real estate called manufactured home parks. And essentially what this is just a large property with, let's just say, 200 houses on it. I buy it. I've got 200 lots of rental income coming through the door, but in one spot, one location. Not 200 scattered over, 13 different suburbs. What a fucking nightmare. You can't manage it. It's expensive. It's very, very cumbersome in terms of management. How do I look after that? What sort of staff? It's all too expensive. But I've got 200 houses in one spot, and they're all paying me a weekly rent. I've got one set of managers, husband, wife, duo. Well, then I can make about 1.4, 1.45 million per annum net, not gross. And that's what I really encourage you to think about is, what asset classes do we need to start considering in your early part that you can work toward? Mark, I don't have enough money to buy a townhouse. Yeah, I know. We're working on that. But would it be 3 townhouses together in one spot? Instead of being 30 grand in income, it's $90,000, one lot of expenses, one lot of insurance, one lot of headache, one spot. I really want you to start to consider what asset classes. And if it's business, and you say, well, I've got this really awesome events business. It's about generators, and I lease, tables, chairs, marquees for weddings. for example. You've got to be able to turn that into, how do I make this thing passive? How can I be autonomous to the building, to the business? How do I create a team or a software piece that allows me to be at distance? How can I now get income? So when people now rent my tables, chairs, generators, marquees, and seats, on the weekend, I'm making money whether I'm at work or not. I can be at the beach with the kids, I can be at an art class with my daughter, and I've still got the dollars coming through the door. Now you might say, well, shit, that's okay, that's sensible, it's smart. It's only making me, $190,000 a year net. Well, that's still good. If your expenses are managed at 110, 115, you are well ahead of the curve. And this is what we've got to start to arrange now, early. I'll give you an example. Many years ago, as many of you probably understand, I did a lot of speaking for Robert Kiyosaki and Donald Trump. Now, oddly, I got a lot of exposure, particularly to Robert Kiyosaki, a lot of time. Golf, chats, lunch, green room, afternoons together. And indirectly, I was introduced to the rich dad of Rich Dad Poor Dad. Now, that fellow's name is Keith Cunningham. Keith's just an absolute, gem of a soul, a beautiful human being, very, very generous, very authentic. He's a Texan, lovely guy. And I got to meet Keith one day. And he wrote the book, he didn't write the book. Robert wrote the book and commercialized it. But the principles of Rich Dad were actually created by Keith Cunningham. So long story short, I get to meet this chap and he is world class. This is the guy that sort of built a business in his early 20s and sold it to CNBC, yes, the TV channel, for $316 million in 1986. Now, that was a lot of coin. But, sadly, off the back of that, Keith went bankrupt. So 316 million cash, right, sells out, and then is bankrupt 2.5 years later. And I find that a very interesting soul to learn from, purely from the point of view that this man has been to the heady heights of money and to the absolute bottom and then back again. That, to me, is someone you can truly learn from. That man has a deep sense of wisdom. And his comments to me, one day I'm sitting around breakfast and his beautiful wife, Sandy, he says to me, Mark, what I realised after I went bankrupt off the back of the CNBC deal was that I was never going to work for money again. He said, too long I'd sold money with the operative that I'll make more for my time. So he's investing 80, 90 hours a week, huge risks, had been paid $316 million, doesn't know how to run a TV channel, the fucking thing blows up, and he's wiped out. But he said, the second round, I was never going to do that again, never sell time. So I went and bought automatic car washers. So this is back in the late 80s, early 90s. He said, I bought one, and it was making me $39,000 a year. I bought two, I bought three. And he said, I spoke to the accountant one day, and he said, Mr. Cunningham, he said, you own 161 of them. And he said, quite embarrassingly, I didn't even know. So, in short words, you don't want to be working for money. And I know it sounds like a throwaway term, and it's a fucking catchphrase among all these books and shit on the internet. But I think that when you and I subscribe to the idea of I'm willing to sell my soul, I'll smash out 90 hours, 100 hours a week, forever, not for 2-3 years, forever, I think we make the fatal mistake of being a slave to money. We haven't learned the skills of affluence. So to break that down and move backwards, I would say to you, let's find asset classes now that make money 24/7. It's going to be real estate of some sort. Whether it be commercial, industrial, I don't care, it doesn't bother me, but I can tell you it'll pay 24/7, 365. Keep them together. So now they're scalable. I can build volume, but they're also saleable at the other end as well. Business has a long tail. There are tons of businesses today that events hire, equipment. It's paying 24/7. Look at the construction industry. Buy yourself some cheap shit like generators and stuff like that and start leasing them, start renting them to construction companies. What's cheaper? Buying a $40,000 generator or renting it for $800 a day. 40 days you fucking own the thing. Like, you look at the building industry, it's explosive. It's not going to slow down anytime soon. Positioning yourself in there. There are so many businesses that offer up a passive revenue stream. We've got to make sure that we position ourselves in that current and not in the still creek.
And would that be my focus as a business owner? I'm not quite ready to go into property. Would my focus be passive income within my
Absolutely.
business as the first step.
Absolutely. You're a good example. You've got to literally sit there and dissect and say, what parts of the business could I generate a passive income from? And yours is easy. How do I sell this stuff where people are paying me for the copyright forever? I own that. They've got to access it. That's passive income. It's done once. Makes sense? There's so many different varieties, but you've just got to spend some time.
Yeah.
Go through the deep thinking. Look at your business or what you do, your skill set. You could be a fucking dentist. How could I create a product that will pay me forever? What's a little technique that I do different from everybody else? I do a particular, I don't know, filling or something, or a brace or whatever, a bloody tray or a whitening gel, but now it pays forevermore. And that is the key. That's the holy grail right there. Property's an easy one because people can relate to, oh yeah, they've got to pay your rent or they've got to move out. But there's so many other businesses that trickle out of that in commerce. Yeah. You just got to start to drill in and say, how do I turn this into a passive income? So getting back to the story, I'm sitting there with Keith and he is the master of passive income. He's in gold, he's in oil, reverse mergers, debentures, he's in property. The guy's a multi-billionaire. And I'm sitting across the breakfast table with Sandy and my wife at the time. We're chatting, the four of us. And he's just such a great soul. He goes, what passive income do you have? Because naturally, he's a very direct guy. I just went, well, I've probably got about 70, 80 properties. He just looks at me. 70, 80 properties. He goes, Robert owns 6,000. He says, I own 3,800. Sandy, how many do you own? She goes, oh, about 1,120. I'm like, 80. Fuck, I feel like a loser. Now, it wasn't about the measure. What he was concerned about is that I could easily spend the revenue of 80. I hadn't hit a passive income because I hadn't earned enough to cover my cost of living. That's what he was most concerned about. Because when you got 6,000, you can't spend that. It's impossible to spend that amount of money. Are you with me?
True.
It's impossible. I don't give a fuck what you do. It's impossible to spend that rent in a year.
Wow.
But what he'd worked out was 70, 80. You've got a lot of work to do. And that really bothered me. A couple of days later, I'm in the plane flying back to Australia, and I'm sitting there going, fuck, if I stop, everything stops. Everything stops. And you've got to remember back then, I was doing 160 days on the road per annum. I had projects in Perth, South Perth. I had projects in North Adelaide, projects all over Melbourne. I had projects in Western Sydney, Brizzy. I was an absolute, as an idiot, flying around and doing 160, 170 days a year out of a suitcase. And yes, I was making good money. But the minute that I decide I want to sort of turn this down, my income would be turned down. There was no systems, there was no methodology in place. It all came off the efforts and the spoils of my back. So I'm saying this for a reason. I really hope this penetrates because, your ignorance is actually half your strength right now. If you adopt the idea that I want to find an asset class that pays me passive income, that could be a motel, that could be a block of flats, that could be 3 commercial buildings, could be 3 commercial shops, 4 commercial sheds, it could be some office space. It doesn't matter, but they've got to be together so that we can scale quite easily. And saleable is very important because you might turn around. I got an offer on Tuesday night for one of my parks. There's an investment arm out of Singapore called GIC. This is the government sovereign investment arm. And they've already thrown, a couple of $1 billion in Australia. They're no slouch. They buy toll roads, they buy all kinds of shit. And they've made a direct approach to buy one of my parks. And I think this particular park has got 216 or 218 sites, homes. Now that spits off about 1.44, 1.49 million a year net after everything's fucking paid, 1.5. And they're looking to pay, about 20 mil for it. Now, to me, I could sell it, but I'll lose the passive income. When you pay just over 5 for it, now they're offering you 25 years later. That's a good deal. And I think that if we can start to align ourselves with, I don't just want to do something to make money. If I can put myself in the right lane and have, a long game ahead of me, if I can get myself in a situation where I understand passive income and I'm going to build this business around that, or I'm going to make that the sole focus of what I do for the next 2, 4, 5 years, you're in a great place. You're in a really great place.
Can I ask, how do you approach that deal? Are you saying that the passive income is more valuable to you than selling it, or is it the other way around?
Great question. The passive income is far more important, isn't it? Because if you have enough passive income, you don't have to work. You need to manage the assets, but you get a team for that. They've been very blessed, you know. There's a lot of very smart people that tend to stick in my sphere, in my orbit. They want to go somewhere, they see it, they get it. But yeah, the passive income's very valuable.
So it's going to be really hard to buy off you.
Well, I don't sell. Not those assets. I'll sell developments, I'll sell blocks of land, I'll sell house and land packs, whatever. But when it comes to something that can spin off such a strong passive income, yeah, not typically a seller, but it's certainly interesting to note. And you can see why they're pursuing it so hard. That's real money. Like they definitely want to be able to purchase that. It's nuts. That's a lot of money for a park that size. So, yeah. Any other thoughts that you got?
Not for now.
Okay. Yeah, so I mean, it's got to be scalable. It's got to be saleable. When you think about, you know, units, flats, go buy a block of flats, but make sure they're all together. Go buy a strata building that's got 4 or 5 units or townhouses. Buy it as one, because then all your overheads are minimal. One lot of rates, one lot of management, one lot of insurance, not 4, 5, or 100 scattered across different suburbs. Scalable, saleable. We've got to get that rhythm. If we start on the right foot here, instead of this process taking 16 years like it did for me, it can easily be achieved in 4, 5, 7. And that's my hope. It can be accelerated, can be done in such a short window of time.
We'll just say one thing. I mean, I think a lot of us are in the position of that we're selling our time every day. We're working really hard, and this idea of bringing in a passive income into our current business sounds great. Like it sounds that would be where we start. What would be your first step into making that happen?
As in the current business and developing a passive income within that operation.
Yeah.
Is just to sit down with a pen and paper. Spend the next 2, 5, 6 months working it out. I don't want to be a fucking slave to this thing. Because when people get into business, all they tend to see is the blue sky. I'm my own boss. I make more money. What a load of nonsense. You take all the risk, no holiday pay, no public liability, nothing. You work Saturdays in aid of what? Often in small business today, SME, small to medium enterprise, that the employees are making more than the employer. You go to a cafe on Sunday, and the girl behind the coffee machine, she's making $72 an hour as a barista, double time. Makes no fucking sense. Do you think that the proprietor is making $70 an hour net on the way out? She's got all the headaches of running it, ownership, this, food stock, lease, public liability, superannuation for 6 employees. What a fucking nightmare. So if you're going to go into business, let's look at the particular parts and say, how could I make that pay? Is there a product? Is there something? Is there a service? What can I build off the back of this current enterprise? Look, the front end machine selling muffins and coffee can pay the bills and keep the doors open. But I need something that pays me forever. What's that? If I sit down and genuinely take the time, and this is what's great, go to the internet, fucking cheap. It's all there, it's all free. You know, you look at other people that have already done it, or you look at products, you go, I could actually do that, I could copy that, or I could do that kind of service. Make sense?
Yeah.
I've seen this before. You know. I'll give you an example. A friend of mine, actually was a builder mate of mine, and he was like, I don't want to be a builder anymore, it just takes too much risk. And there was all these quantity surveyors running around doing government work, right? And he's probably making 110, 115,000 a year as a builder. He signed on as a contractor to go around and check out bridges, make sure they're in good maintenance and good order. $173,000 a year. No risk, no builder's insurance, nothing. But a smart way of seeing where's the money? Where's the money? Another good friend of mine in the building industry as well, Tyler. This guy's a ceramic tiler, does floors, bathrooms, whatever. Him and his son. He's like, mate, my knees are so wrecked. He said, I squat down, I can't get back up after 4 hours. I'm shot. He said, but I did notice that I looked at the margins when people were importing tiles and I thought, what the fuck can I do that? Now, this guy lands 13 containers of tiles every single month. He's only got to make 50 cents per tile. The guy's crushing it. I can promise you, that's a whole lot smarter than being on your knees tiling someone's house in the hope that you get paid. They don't have to. This guy imports 13 containers now, crushing it. I just find that far more enterprising. I find that far more sensible. For the 40 hours you're going to invest it in a different way, but make sure it pays well. Now, that business has a saleable value to it. It's an operating business, turns a net profit every year. It's pretty substantial, he's told me. That actually has a face value that I could sell to someone for 4.5, 5.5 million. Him and his son laying tiles, that's worth zip. Goodwill, you might get 50 grand. 5 million. So you've got to start to really play that out. But Mark, I haven't got the money. We'll fucking find it. There's always great ideas. There's always backers to great ideas. If you don't know where they are, just go talk to lawyers. They protect the high net worths. That's where the money is. That's what I did. You know, I didn't have any money when I started projects, but I had a lawyer that was doing all of my deals, my documents, and I said, who have you got in your database that's got some money that wants to throw into a transaction? Oh, fuck, I've got heaps. It puts me in touch with an optometrist. Lovely guy, Stuart. I sat down with this guy for an hour. I thought, this guy is an absolute gem. He's smart, he's intelligent, he's got a good business, and he's got some coin. Mate, the rest is history. It's just not that hard. I think we overcomplicate it. You know, we try and make it hard in our own mind to justify why we shouldn't start. That's not how you get ahead. So yes, we want to make sure that our ladder is against the right wall. Start thinking carefully about what passive assets, what asset class do I need to get into that pays me forevermore. If we start on the right foot, we'll finish well. Yeah, and manufactured home parks, that was for me, to sort of give a glaring example. That was one. 5.5 years ago, I came across that industry. It made total sense to me, although a lot of my peers and colleagues didn't see it at the time. Mark, how much are you making out of your development business each year? Oh, 12, 16.5 million net. What the fuck would you play around with parks for? You're making $1 million a month. What are you, an idiot? I said, yeah, but Troy, if I stop working, the $1 million stops. I can't keep doing that. I'm not willing to take that risk. Market cycles move up and down, they shift. I said, you've seen it. We all know people get wiped out at the wrong time. But if I have a passive income, and he just thought, you know, a couple of them were very critical of the direction that I'd taken. It was very, very different from what they knew.
That's a really important point, and I think we are hit with critique when we start to go down this road. And why is that? Is that because there is an element of risk?
I think in their mind it's unknown. They'd rather comment on something that they feel comfortable with than something that's completely grey. You know, they want to stick with the status quo. And that's what people are good at. That's why they all buy white. Most people buy white cars. It's not competitive, it's just white. And that's how a lot of people think, particularly in business. But you know, for me to open up a conversation about parks back then was just unheard of. Unheard of. It was unprecedented. Why the fuck would you get into that? And I had to build a management team because I'm not a good manager. I'm just not. I know my strengths, I know my weaknesses. And they were like, that's just so expensive. You're buying all these parks, 5, 8, 9, 12, 13 million bucks each. Yeah, great, but they're making me $1 million a fucking month. Oh yeah, but you can do that in projects. For how long? At what risk? I'm borrowing 80 million, 110 million to make that. If the tide shifts against me, where's it gone? And I've got no end value, I've got no business at the other end. Does that make sense? I'm just swapping time for money, but just at a higher scale. That's all. And that's what developers do. That's why they're not very good investors. They're not that intelligent. You've got to have an asset that pays you 24/7, 365. Making sense?
Yeah. Amazing.
That's all the notes that I've got. And by all means, please keep punching them questions through. I've got quite a few here already, but I do want to be able to assist. If you're able to raise questions in real time, I think that's going to serve you so much better. And I will cover off a couple of points before we finish here this afternoon. John, J-O-N, John H. Mark, I currently have a business that is set up well and practically runs itself. I now want to take on another business. Would you suggest starting a business from scratch or purchasing an established business to potentially take on someone else's problems? Great question. Look, John, it's a really good question. And I've had a conversation like this in the last fortnight. I will say this. You and I are in a very fickle part of our economy. We've had a gangbuster 2.5 years post-COVID. We've seen every part of industry explode. Property, managed markets, managed funds. We've seen everything blow up for the better. I think that you and I are going to go through a down cycle. Now, when you say buy a property, buy a business, I'd probably make the suggestion of don't necessarily pay market value. Be patient, be prudent, diligent, and wait till early next year. I would say you'll probably buy a business for 60 cents, 70 cents on the dollar. You're going to see some real challenges. You're going to see some deep disappointment when next year rolls around. Banking is going to change. We're seeing the federal government, they're obviously incapable of running the economy. I just feel sorry for our children, Labor government at the helm, and all they've done is write checks for the last 7.5 months. We're really digging ourselves a deep hole in debt. So it means that there's ill management of our economy. The snap back of that is high interest rates. Unemployment starts to trend up. Inflation is still out of control. It's in the 7s and 8s. It's bullshit when they say 4 or 5. That's absolute nonsense. So I do see that business will get punished quite badly over the next 6 to 12 months. My suggestion would be to sit on the sidelines, my friend, and just wait patiently. I think you'll do very well in picking up established businesses. Now, if your business you currently run is set up well, practically runs itself, if that's your thing, it may be worthwhile setting up an additional business that either offers a different product or a different service. It could be well worth in your interest to try and sort of capture more of the market. But I'm a big fan of actually buying or taking on someone else's because it's just faster. But just make sure that your due diligence is in place. It's like buying a property with a DA. It's not an issue. You want to make sure there are no bugs, there are no challenges with that business and its history. Peter B. Mark, if renting, should I focus on paying off my home or buy investment properties? Fantastic question. Peter, you and I should never really focus on paying off the home. If you look at the strategy that I've used for many, many years, it's called an automatic acquisition plan. We are trusting the market's going to double every 10 years. Now, in the last 4, we know Australia property has doubled. That's abnormal. But if I've got a family home today worth $1 million, and in 10 years' time it's worth 2, that's a good jump, good gain. But if I had 3 or 4 investment properties that were all $1 million, my net gain in the next 10 years would be 4 million, not 1. Does that make sense? And my encouragement to you would be to think for yourself, how do I speed ahead? Because I don't want to pay off my home with after-tax dollars. It's just ludicrous. Our parents did that, and that's why they obviously didn't get ahead terribly well. So my suggestion is, if I've got 4 properties, investment properties, plus my family home at the end of a 10-year window, I can sell down 2 or 3 of those investment properties and cash out 3 million. I can own my own home outright in a 10-year block. And that is not doing it with after-tax dollars. If I buy 4 investment properties, I've got the family home sitting there, I sell 2 or 3, I've still got one investment property making me 45 grand a year, 65 grand a year net income. So you're always better off using the properties as a way of paying off your family home. Joan. Mark, at what point in your portfolio would you hire your own property manager to manage your portfolio and stop using an agency to do it? Joan, that's a great question. I would say look, I've had this before and it's difficult. Bringing an in-house manager, I'm assuming was the case for me, that all my properties were in different states. So it wasn't an easy task of trying to get a manager in-house, that could do all of that work interstate. It's impossible. So if all the properties were in one pocket, you'd have to think it's going to be more worthwhile around 30, 40 properties. Because obviously it's more cost effective and you have greater control over the tenants. But if they're scattered all over Australia like mine were back then, it doesn't really pay dividends to do so. One of the best ways of measuring up a property manager is obviously get on the telephone and talk to other landlords. Too often we trust LJ Hooker, Ray White, Biggins and Scott, and all of a sudden it's like, fuck, I'm 6 months into this bloody lease agreement and I really am not happy with the performance of the manager. I should have known better. Pick up the phone before you sign off on the Form 6 and say, hey, I'm a landlord like you. Apparently you've got a property in Auburn. Tell me about the management with LJ Hooker. Oh, it's been shit, it's been great. That's the way to verify it. I don't care what they say. Stop listening to the lip service. I'm very studious around doing my back research. Michelle G. Mark, your story about the home park. Could you not invest the 20 million in something else that could provide the same, if not more, passive income? Absolutely. You could definitely, Michelle. And one of the things that we'll talk about over the next coming months is how commercial properties you can easily manipulate, and I say that word in a positive way, manipulate the return. Let's say that the park is worth 20 million, right, round figures. As a 10% return, it should be earning around about 2 million a year. Now that's gross, remember, gross. Net's a little bit different, it's about 1.45. But let's just say $2 million a year, GR gross. Now, if I take that mark and take that cash and then go over and buy something else, I could be in a different world. It could be industrial sheds, it could be logistics, storage facilities, things like that. I could. I know parks pretty well now after 5.5 years in that space. I'm going to go buy a cheaper, badly run park and then manipulate the return by adding more and more value to the asset. I'll get a DA for 30 more houses. I'll go in there, lift all the rents. I'll renovate 200 of the houses. I'll make sure the place is humming. I'll lower the operational costs. And all of a sudden now I can take an asset that's worth 10 and it's worth 16, 17 million in 4 years. That's what we've been very, very good at. So could I go park that money, place that capital in a different industry, a different asset class? Sure. Do I kind of stick with what I know? Typically I do. There's less mistakes that way. Mark, this is from Tim B. When starting out with your investments, how do you build that mindset when considering risk and reward without being put off by the risk? Great question, Tim. I like that. Start small. Tim, there is risk with everything. And I can promise you, my friend, you're going to fuck it up. You're going to lose some money. It's sad, it's true, but the most expensive lessons are the ones you take the most from. They're the most expensive. So, don't be too bent out of shape of, what if I lose? What if you win? What if you get it right? What if you pay a bit over 5 million for the park and you sell it for nearly 20, 5.5 years later? It's not a bad thing, but you will make a few errors along the way, man. Don't be hard on yourself. Don't crucify yourself. Realize it's part of the journey. And quite frankly, you'll be a better person. You'll be a far more informed, far more balanced investor. And you're not going to get there by just, theory working from the couch. You don't want to be a couch expert. There are plenty of questions. Keep the questions coming too, folks. I really want to be able to help you and assist you any possible way that I can. Haya A, H-A-Y-A. If I genuinely don't have an urge to be rich, is this a bad thing? I know it is a weird question, but just curious on your thoughts. Hey, that's not weird at all, and it's not a bad thing. No. But I reckon there's going to be something, if you're listening in so far, there's going to be something that is a burn for you. It's either going to be animal welfare, it's going to be philanthropy, saving the kids, it's going to be about, stopping child sex slavery. If you don't have to be rich in the sense of, I want to live lavish, Mark, and be seen in Prada every day. That's not my idea. My variation of that is to be free. If freedom's not your thing, there's going to be something in there, my love, where it's a hot button for you. The key is to be honest with yourself and discover it. It could be philanthropy. It could be, we've done churches, we've done schools, we've done hospitals over Bali, Indonesia, Thailand, Malaysia. It's going to be something. There's going to be something there. You're put on this earth for a reason. And even what you're saying there, I sense that you're going to have a purpose behind it. It's not going to be enough for you to go through life, in remote control. Give it some thought, take some time, do some deep thinking. Spence J. Mark, if you lost it all, were high in bad debt, what would you do right now? Everything that we've talked about so far, Spence, I'd go back, my friend, I'd find myself a Saturday job. I'd start grinding. I'd start working really fucking hard. If I can put away an extra 450, 600 bucks a week, I'd smash the bad debt first, because that's probably going to be credit card debt because it's the easiest to access. That's why most of us fall in that trap. It's going to be 18, 19%. Attack that first. If you've lost it all, what's great is what I don't want you to lose is the lessons in between. There was something that got you into that hole. What was it? Was it greed? Was it lack of research, lack of due diligence, lack of experience? If you've lost it all, do not lose the lesson. Take that with you, because that just schools you in a very, very different way. It'll make you a fucking better investor, I promise you. And some of the stories I could share with you are embarrassing of how I've lost money. They're shameful. I told my daughter once and she's like, Daddy, I find that hard to imagine. And I'm sitting there in an office in Sydney, almost having a fist fight with 3 guys about how I lost some money and explained it to her. And she said, "That's unusual, Dad. You never lose money like that. So it's going to happen. But don't lose the lesson. Take that away with you. It puts you in a very, very different position and a position of strength as you go forward." So I've got 12:54. I've got to give you some details here this afternoon. So I trust you've enjoyed yourself and you're taking value from this. I would highly recommend that you be consistent with these lives. You know, we've covered a little bit of topic today, we've covered a little bit of content Tuesday. I want you to start stacking them. I want you to start to recognize that the more meat we put to the skeleton, the more complete it is. And you'll become better and better at what you do. You'll start to draw your own conclusions over time, and you'll make decisions like that. We'll prioritize bad debt over anything else. You'll have that sense of knowledge about you. Today's comments, if you've got your number one takeaway for us today, please make that comment, post that Facebook. Our next training is going to be next Tuesday, same time, Tuesday, midday. I trust that you've enjoyed this. There'll be a ton of value next Tuesday. Our subject matter for next Tuesday is going to be around the topic of, yes, building capacity. So what are the assets, Mark? How do I get good in each of those areas to make money from not one income, but several? Your next coming up event, we've got an event coming up called More Than Money. It's around the earlier parts of November. May I suggest, if you want to make some inquiries, it's less than $500. I can promise you, you will get a ton of value from that. I'll be there with you for the 8.5, 9 hours of the day. Everything we cover here, we go into far greater detail. My suggestion is get yourself a seat. You need to put your ass in the gear. Anyone that shares this live training on the Facebook feed will go through the draw to have a one-on-one coaching session with myself. And I'm here to support and say, you know what, you can do this. You know, as you probably worked out by now, the passive income conversation does give you some insight as to how I've done it. But it also gives you some insight too as to why I'm here. It sort of spells out the fact that it's not necessary, but I do feel the need. It's upon my heart, and I've always had an idea of sharing with others and helping them get ahead. So that's the reason, that's the rationale for being able to be here and help you, support you through your tough times, but more importantly, see you win. So I'll see you next Tuesday, midday. Have a great weekend, and happy investing. Let's make some money. Bye for now.